What a button. Got all the way to my seat. Okay, folks. So let's wait a little bit longer. Oh, here's some more faces. Hi, Gail. How are you? How did Torah study go last night? I don't hear you. You're muted. This is
Good
the
point.
word. Was it good? You enjoy it?
No, I enjoyed it, but you have to
Good.
ask the other people, the people
Great,
that
I'm
came.
sure they enjoyed it. I'm
great.
sure they
It
enjoyed it.
was great. Really,
Right.
we
So
loved
I
it.
see
Thank
Tammy
Gail was
says,
great. She was wonderful.
I'm sure she is, and you guys have an old connection. I know.
Gail, was that recorded? Do you know if that was
The
recorded, Gail?
Torah study thing. I'm not sure what the minhag is for that.
Oh, okay.
I think Tyler just wrote me that it was, but
Oh, good.
Great,
That's good.
great.
Good.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll give it another minute or two, and then we'll start. And there's a lot of details, so you know, I prepared a PowerPoint. So if you want to go back on the recording, you can go back to the PowerPoint to get the information. I've been doing a lot of thinking about this for many years, and realizing that there are better, I would say better, but there are maybe more convenient ways of doing it than normally you would think about. So we have now one more come in. Hi, Lori. How are you? Are you in Florida? No, you're here? You're okay. Good. Okay. Good. So let's begin. I'll start right away. Let's see if I can get this up. Where did I put him? 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 Let's check if it's over here. Hold on. I had it up. I practiced with you, Sue, didn't I?
You did. So I
Yeah.
know that you
So
know
I
how
know
to.
it's here. Okay, let me just see where can we find it now. Uh, Drive. Maybe it's there. Hold on. Let me see if this will work. Are you seeing that, anyone?
No, not yet. It's not up
Not yet.
yet.
Not up yet. Okay, hold on. Tiferet, if I had it in Drive, would I be able to do it from there?
Yeah, you just have to make sure you share your screen in Zoom.
Okay, let me do that first. Come back here. Share screen in Zoom. Okay. Drive. I remember I had it in Drive. Oh, it's really a pain. I can't do that. Okay. Okay, here it is. How are we doing with that?
No, not yet.
Not
Did
seeing it yet? Really?
No.
You know why? Because probably when you click on the share screen in Zoom,
Yeah.
they make
Yeah.
you also, there's like another little blue button when they ask you what you want to share.
Right.
So either you probably share your desktop. That's the best. Then you can just make the
Well, I
window.
say the file will be, it says here this file will be shared. Who can
Oh, wait.
access link?
Share
Share screen. Okay, let's see if that
share
works.
screen.
How's that? No.
It's really confusing because in Zoom and Drive, there's a share button.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, 1 second. Got it. Okay. Is that better? Hold on, hold on. Pardon me, I'm sorry, folks.
That's okay.
I've just I tested it. I tested it the other day with Sue,
Yes, and
and it worked
fine.
well. And now it's
Yeah.
not necessarily doing that.
Yeah.
Let me try now.
Rav Tiferet, is it the share screen on the bottom of his screen? Is that
In the Zoom box, it should be.
But it has to be something that's already on your desktop.
Yeah, I understand. Let me
Yeah,
just check again. I have it there, but it's not doing that precisely. But I will try it again. Hold on.
on mine? It's right next to the chat.
Right next to the chat. Okay, hold on.
And then that box pops up. And in the box, it
Which
asks
box?
you
In chat, it comes up?
Next to chat, right next to chat.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes, share
yeah.
screen. I have that I pressed.
and
I'm
then
just
when
trying
you
to see
press
how I
that,
can share it well.
another box comes
So
up.
when I get to Drive, it gives me the file. I'm pressing on the file. It says
Yeah.
shared,
No, don't
and
share
then
it
it
in
says
Drive.
share screen. What?
Don't share it in Drive. You want to share it in Zoom. So first in
Okay, so let me
Zoom,
get this over.
But you have to
open up the
you have
Zoom.
to open it in Drive first and have it on your desktop. It has to be opened.
Yes, I've had that, but let me just try it again. Hold on a second. We'll edit this out for the crowd. I promise you. Let me just see what happens because it was just so right the other day. We just did it, and it was very nice. Dropbox, share. Okay, hold on 1 second. Let me get this down here. Exit full view. Okay. And that is not you don't see it yet, do you?
No.
Okay. Let me see if I can do a share screen with that. No, it's not going. All right.
You have a Mac?
I feel badly. 1 second. I worked hard on this. It was the first time I did it, and obviously I didn't do it as well as I should.
It's just the Zoom button. That's
this
all.
thing.
Because Zoom asks you to press the button twice. That's it.
Okay.
Right on the bottom. You didn't have difficulty finding it when you
Yeah.
did
Now
it
you because I see it now, but you guys don't, right?
Yeah. So go back to, since it's on your desktop, then go back to Zoom
Right.
and then hit share screen.
Yeah.
And then a box should pop up.
Okay.
And then in the box, you hit
Okay.
select desktop. And then there on the bottom of that box, there's a little blue button that says share.
Okay. I don't on my what I just said share. It has Microsoft SharePoint,
No.
Microsoft OneDrive, Google Drive, Box, and Dropbox. No.
Oh, that's
It doesn't have
trying
what I
to share
thought was
the
there.
document. You have to go back into the Zoom application.
Okay, back in the Zoom application. Here I am, back in the Zoom.
Okay. Then at the bottom, there's the green share screen.
Yeah, yes, I have that. And then
Okay.
what unfortunately does not come up is my the ethical wills that are on my.
It won't. No, it won't come up all the way. It'll just ask you to share your desktop in the Zoom box.
Yeah. Okay. Add people in groups. Share with people in groups, and they ask a name for it. I don't know.
Well, you can send it to me, and I'm happy to share the screen.
Okay, I will send it to you. Hold on a
Yeah.
second. Okay, I'll send it to you from there. Hold on a second. We're getting there. Okay, share screen. Okay. There we go. So I can send you my speaker notes. So I'm on the one that it's on my desktop, and I want to send it to you. So I have to go to what? See here it says share it with anyone with the link tvzbrooklyn.org.
Sure.
Anyone has that link can access.
Sure.
No
Just
sign-
type in my email there
Okay.
and send it over.
It's over there. Okay.
It's over. All right.
It should be sent. So let's just before we do that, let's just begin with a slight introduction. So basically, one of the things we're really aiming to do in this is to make a distinction between what wills are, which have to deal with finances, have to deal with property, have to deal with things that are important to do. I'm behind on doing it for me. Even those things are really important to pay attention to. But then, of course, there's this other thing called the ethical will, which goes back a very, very long time. And I've given you, once we get this on, you'll see a very step-by-step way of dealing with this. and making it possible for you to do it, hopefully something that's enjoyable for yourself to do, as well as really become important for those who come after you. So I don't know if Tiferet has received it yet.
Yep, I'm
Okay,
ready.
so can we do it now? Are we seeing anything, folks?
Here it goes.
Here it goes. Okay. So how, when, and why? Okay. Well, I just explained that. It's important. So we're moving on to the next one. And first of all, decide who your audience is. Your family, if you don't have kids perhaps, cousins, nephews, etc., children or grandchildren. I think each one of them have their own a way of dealing with these things. So let's move on and just see what we have. Step 1. Okay, create a biography text. This is be for everyone. So this could be a standard thing. It's like writing your own Wikipedia page, if you will. Basically, where does your family come from? I think it's really often very upsetting to me when I ask people, you know where you come from? They go, blah, 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 somewhere in Russia. It's always that way. If you could do a little work, this might be satisfying for yourself as well, to try to get some more information about it. It doesn't have to be you'll find the exact town, because you probably don't know the exact town is, but they always tell you it's near something. We were near Kiev, the Ukraine. We were near Warsaw, etc. So somewhere that you can get some help from this are places like the Jewish Genealogical Society, Wikipedia, the Encyclopedia Judaica. The YIVO has now an encyclopedia of Eastern European Jewry, and there are other sources as well. So you can get a more specific kind of thing. If you have the name of the town, what I did, which was kind of interesting, my father kept talking about the town he was born in, and so I went to Google Maps, and I said I want to travel from that town to where he lived, the sort of the suburbs of the bigger city he moved to. And sure enough, I actually found the town. The spelling issues where you had to keep spelling it in different ways, and it told me I go from this town and I go and take exit 32 and I get to the other place. It was kind of bizarre that these places were actually real, because they were always stories, and I never really saw them as real places. So that's really a wonderful way to do it. And it is kind of, it gives you also a sense, if you want to check on what the town is. You're seeing the town that my father was born in 1911 had changed quite a bit by 2021. And I understood what the next step was. He moved sort of from that town to what we would call, let's say, Framingham, a suburb of Boston, and then he moved from there into a larger city, which was called Lutsk in the Ukraine, western Ukraine. If you have a family tree, create a link to it. There are a number of sites that you might want to join. One is called My Heritage, where you can post a lot of nice things. You can post birthdays, anniversaries, which are wonderful to have, and it gives you a reminder that, you know, your Aunt Sophie's birthday coming up, don't forget to send a card. And if you have one family tree, as I say, connect the link to it. I'm talking about doing a lot of this stuff electronically today, because as much as ethical wills were written, remember, whatever you use on video, particularly when we move to the next step, can always be transcribed if you really feel you need to have it in sort of a document form. Also, what were the names of your relatives, occupations, migration information? There's a lot now available. I remember going to Ellis Island, and I saw all the ship logs with names and where they came from and the age they were. So there are a lot of sources to find that kind of information. So this general document will be that is something that you will give to everyone in your in the audience that you have. And then we get to other things in a moment. So let's go to step 2. And we'll stop and have questions, of course, in a little while. So your biography in brief. Your date of birth. Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? So your grandchildren should know this, or your nephews or nieces if you don't have grandchildren. What is or was your occupation? What are your special interests? Communities you belong to or have belonged to? And causes that you have supported over the years. That's part of what an ethical will does. It basically says, this is what I really held valuable to me from a moral sense, from a social sense. And I think that's not something to be taken lightly, because ultimately, I hope, that people who've had these connections to causes have already passed them on to their kids while they're alive. But certainly, and then we'll ask the question later on of when do you give this to people? Do you give it after you're dead, or you give it to people while you're still alive? And we'll talk about the pros and cons of each. So again, date of birth, where did you grow up, where did you go to school, what is or was your occupation, and what are your special interests, etc., communities you belong to, have belonged to, and causes that you have supported over the years. Let's go to step 3 now, and then we'll get a chance to have some discussion. So, the information that I said above can be presented in many different media, video or written. Video can be transcribed if desired. You can also create a private family YouTube channel. I don't know if you were aware of that. And you could put on materials that can be shared only by your family via password. Remember, there'll be many innovative delivery systems for information in the future. Whatever they may be, content will be maintained throughout the coming years. No matter what medium is used, eventually when you plug a USB into your head, however that's going to be, I hope I'm dead by then, but there'll be all kinds of ways of getting this across. But the bottom line is, without content, it doesn't matter. You need to have content, and we'll worry about how it's transmitted in the future. You won't have to necessarily worry about that. Step 4, and then we'll have some discussion after this. So this is where I'll give you an example. My mother-in-law, of blessed memory, died not long ago, maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago. She was 95. She died peacefully. Her quality of life of the last years before her death were not great. But in looking through things, my brother-in-law, she died in Florida, my brother-in-law looked and found an envelope filled with a handwritten letter to each child and grandchild or other family member. So they've already gotten the overall thing. They know where you come from. They know what you. That's information that's important to pass on to people that you will not pass on in your quote-unquote will, but you can pass it on an ethical will. So they wrote a note to each child and grandchild, and it was written 15 years before she died, because she didn't know. She was 95. She didn't know how old she would get to. So when she was around 75. She felt, maybe, who knows, I'm 75, I might go tomorrow, who knows. She wrote a little note with a date on it. And what was wonderful about each note, first of all, it was very personalized. She did the biggest mitzvah you can do, which Yaakov Avinu, Jacob, our ancestor, did to his kids when they gathered around his deathbed, is he saw who they were. He saw who they were, and she was able to personalize it to each kid, and it was just wonderful. And they felt that this was really, boy, my grandma, or my grandpa, in this case it was grandma, my grandma really got me, really grokked me, as used to say in the old days of Vonnegut, really grokked me. Remember, these letters can be dated. These letters need not be very long. The intent is to capture a specific event that you have shared, perhaps, and also to relate to each recipient of the letter about how you endeavor to see their individual strengths and personalities, and of course express blessings for their future. And these letters may be written to reflect on life cycle events, b'nai mitzvah, weddings, births, etc. And you might want to, I wrote a letter to my grandson when he was born. I will hopefully send another one at another stage of his life. And so you can think ahead. God willing, there will be simchas in the future, and you could actually give blessings for all of those, even without knowing who the people are, but it's a wonderful thing to have. And these are additions to that overall bio that will, as I say, be distributed to all. And I think that's, I have one more, that's it. Is that the last step, Tiferet? Oh. Okay. You may also include a brief statement of the convictions you have stood for in your life. This may be the same message for all the recipients. It might be part of that initial kind of statement. How have these convictions been challenged? And how are they overcome? And this might include illnesses and other challenges, financial, dealing with loved ones, family, and friends. Sometimes people are unaware of schisms that have been created in the family, of members of the family who might be estranged from each other. And you can decide how you want to mention that and realize you do have a cousin living in Arizona. His father and I, for some reason, became estranged 25 years ago, etc. And his name and the kid's names don't really come up. I think that's really important for kids to know, and etc. about the fact that there are challenges. Now, this is what in a few weeks you all, not this year, but perhaps online, will also be doing at the Seder. The Seder is really an attempt for intergenerational conversation. I often mention this to you, but you remember the Shabbat Hagadol, we read the Haftarah, which is the last Haftarah in all of the prophets, the last section, and it says that Elijah will come on that great day, Eliyahu, and what will he do? He will turn the hearts of the parents to the children, and the hearts of the children to the parents, and this will avoid destruction of the world. That cross-generational. Now, what do you have to have in this discussion or statement is, this is what I got through, and I got through it. This was my narrow place. This was my Mitzrayim. I got through it, whether it was an illness or other challenge. And that gives encouragement for hopefully the next generation to realize that they too will confront challenges in their lives, and that one can, with help and with conviction and with hope, get through them as well. So if this is basically an overview. So step 5 is basically friends and others who have made their mark on you in a positive way, mentors, family members, colleagues, and others. I think it's always good to show that you are part of a chain. Didn't come out of the world de novo, right? All of us have had people who have influenced in our lives, some in the family and some otherwise. I've been blessed with wonderful teachers my whole life, and specific ones I would like to mention as well. So those are really the basic things, but let's just also talk about some very practical things. To be made available to children, grandchildren, and family members before your demise. Health proxies and powers of attorney. Funeral arrangements. Pre-planning is a great gift, I often get calls from people, my father died, what do I do? We don't know about a funeral director, we don't know about getting a plot and all that. And it's really not something you want to really have to think about after the death of a loved one. Do you want a traditional Chevra Kadisha preparation for burial? Don't assume that that's the case, but if indeed you do want it, please mention it. To mention if you want a traditional Shiva. Don't assume, because right now what happens all often is the kids or other family members say, well, I think we'd like to have one for an hour. And you might say, well, I was raised where the respect for my family was that I had a Shiva with a minyan in the home, or for the entire period of time. Don't assume that your values are going to be observed unless you say them explicitly. Because I don't think, and I might be a hard ass about this, I think that's what children should be doing, is carrying on what the parent wanted for his or her post-death ritual. And make clear that these requests be honored and not feel that it may be an inconvenience. I don't care if they're inconvenient. I think to take a week off after you lose a parent is giving them a great gift. The cocoon that is created in Shiva, those of us who have experienced it have been so important. And of course, many people have no thought in their mind to take a week off after a birth. Birth and death, biggies. Number 10, right? Number 10. So don't get caught up. Now, if you don't care about what they do, you can say, do it any way you like. That's fine too. That's a direction, and you might say that, etc. And do you want yard sites observed or not, and how? We have many famous, perhaps the most famous will is Shalom Aleicham's will, the great writer Shalom Aleichem, Shlomo Rabinowitz, who in his will said, look, when the time comes and I'm gone, if you're a person of a more observant persuasion, go to shul, say Kaddish. If you're not, then you know what? Gather the family together and read my stories and laugh. And that started in 1917 and goes on to this very day, 105 years later. It started off in the home and then it grew. His granddaughter was Belle Kaufman, a name you may know, up the down staircase and stuff like that. She lived, Baruch Hashem, to 100 years old, kept it going. It moved from a house, an apartment in the Bronx. It got bigger and bigger and bigger and eventually had a hall, and they would get Broadway performers to read the stories, and people literally would be rolling in the aisles. And that's what he wanted, that his stories should continue to live and that his kids and his grandkids would be part of that. So do you want a candle lit for your yard site? Is that something you do for your parents? Do you want that to continue? Well, you've got to say it. You can't assume that this younger generation, particularly those who have not been raised traditionally, would even know about, unless you make it very clear. Do you want them to say Kaddish, not say Kaddish? Do you want them to do something special on your yard site, right? Where would you like them to contribute charity on your yard site, which is a good, important kind of custom as well? Do you have something you say, okay, please, when on my yard site, write a check to this organization. I supported it my entire life. I would be feeling wonderful about it. We still do that quite often today. We give contributions in honor of. Sometimes they're mentioned, if you remember, in obituaries, this society, American Cancer Society, whatever it is good to be explicit about it, and it'd be one wonderful way to honor your thing. And what charitable causes I mentioned. And this may also, of course, be part of your financial will, and being very clear about how much, what amounts of money, whatever, are going to be given to charitable causes. And I think that's really the last one, right, Teferet? I believe. Okay. So there was a lot of information, but in general, let's just talk a little bit. I'll open it up for questions. You can unmute yourself or raise your hand as you like. And I'm going to try to get a big view of all of you, a full screen. Okay. Oh, you're so gorgeous, all of you. Wonderful. Okay. So nice to see so many faces. It feels very weird. It's been a year, you know. It's like really weird. And you look at a person and go, funny, you don't look older. You look great. Everybody looks great. I gained the COVID-19, however, but you can't see that. That's the 19 pounds you gained, you know, during COVID. So, okay. So raise your hand if you want to say something, ask a question. I know it was a lot, but that will be available on the recording, and you can go through that again. So I'll do those who took Wise Aging with Ann and I, and there are a number of you who did. One of the exercises we did was a life review, and the way we did it, remember, was the river of life. How do you remember? We did a big sheet, and you created a river of life. This is from my teacher, Reb Zalman, Olav Shalom, and you broke it up into different. We broke it up every 7 years, but you can do it every 10 years. It depends. And we asked you, without giving it a lot of thought, what came to your mind when you thought about those years, like when you're 0 to 10. The stuff that you've been told rather than you remember, but those things that sparkled out to you. You wrote one word. This is a good preparation for the Wikipedia page for yourself, right? The second decade, the third decade, the fourth decade, the fifth, and I'm hoping for many of you, 12 decades, right? 12 decades, we're hoping. But the bottom line is that you may not even know your direction of your life unless you look and you say, wow, I see that all this started a long time ago. This was not something that, you know, changed radically. I was already on a path when I was 12. I was already on a path when I was 18. And I think those are very helpful ways for you to start remembering what is it you want to pass on. So that river of life could be an exercise that might be helpful to you. And I think in general, the idea of life review, those of you who do Wise Aging with us, and God willing, next fall we'll come back and do it in person, because Ann and I felt we couldn't do it on Zoom. We couldn't create the cohesiveness of the community we needed. Those of you who have taken that know that that's one of the nice things about it. We do become a really wonderful group of people who are willing to really speak to each other in a confidential way. So this idea of life review also leads to some of the other things I mentioned, which is stewardship. Stewardship. How do you now understand your life as an act of stewardship on this planet, and that's something as well to pass on. And a number of other things as well, of course, is in your life review. Things that truly, as I said, really important for them to know. What really inspired you? What inspired you? And I said that mentioning mentors and mentioning people who have opened your mind, opened your lives, given you, and, and I'm sure there are many. And you don't have to give bios of each person, but it'd be nice to say, I had a wonderful teacher in high school. I still remember her name, Mrs. Kelly, and she opened me up to geography, which I thought I would hate. And it changed my life, and I decided to travel. I became a traveler because of that. Or you have Mr. Horowitz in Hebrew school, the only one I liked, right? Because he brought candy to class. Wow, that would be something, and he kept me interested in it because of that. So those are little vignettes that reflect on the fact that guess what, your Zadie, your Bubby, your grandpa, your grandma, however you are called, pops and ops, opas, whatever you are, that they were real people. They weren't just figureheads, etc. So this is work, I understand, but it's good work. It's good work. It's good for you. It's good for everybody, and it's nice because it gives you a real opportunity to do your life review yourself, which I think is an important step as we get to a certain age, and we don't know what the future will bring, and we do it. So you don't have to do it full time. Do a little bit at a time. One thing I also found helpful is I said to my kids once for a birthday gift. I remember it was my 67th birthday about 5 years ago, just remembering it in preparation for this. And a 7 and 6 was 13, right? Which is for us a lucky number. And I said, we were on vacation. I said, I'd like you to ask me 13 questions that you are curious about. And each answer was done on a little iPhone video, 2 to 3 minutes. And with the attention span of people today, that's a lot. So don't expect that people are going to sit down and listen to an hour talk from you. Okay, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. But 2 or 3 minutes, and then once you have that, you can create that YouTube channel if you wish, and that gives people an opportunity who are not there to actually share in that kind of material. And the questions were interesting. I happen to have had a first marriage. They were very curious about that. Stuff like that. Or what was my first job? I didn't go around. Most of us don't go around and say, my first job was X and Y and Z. Some people do in their transferring of knowledge to family and friends. But those are the questions they wanted to ask, or since they didn't know their Zetas or my Zetas, that they're dead. They all died in the Shoah, 3 of the 4. What were they like? They kept asking me, what was your Bubby like? Because Bubby they didn't know. The Zeta they didn't know. And I said, well, I can give you as much information as I can, and many of you will be able to give much more information because I know many of you had Bubbies and Zadies till you were maybe in your teens or beyond that. So I think that's really a nice kind of thing. So you give them an opportunity to ask you questions while you're alive. After you're dead, it's very hard to answer. I remember after my mom passed on, I had the custom of calling Erev Shabbos, and it was hard to break it. But they put you on hold after they're gone, and all you hear in the music is interesting. It's the Hallelujah chorus. It's kind of interesting, but it takes a long time to get a response. So let them ask you questions, and these questions can be you can decide to answer them or not. But do snippets. Take advantage of the fact. And do it in a comfortable area. We did it around a table. And we were dressed casually. We were dressed like real people. It wasn't a setup, a production, a dramatic, and everybody wore a tie and so wanted to be serious. It was fun. It was fun. I think it's so important for your children and grandchildren to know that you had fun. And life is a place that you still can have fun. I know it's hard when we're going through such tough times, but they really benefit from that because I think ultimately that's how we get to know each other is by what makes us happy. what makes us fulfilled, etc., etc. So I'm going to stop now, open up for questions and comments and maybe things I missed that you'd like to add. So raise a hand or a foot, whatever's more comfortable, and don't be shy. Yes, Gail, welcome and unmute. Thank you.
So thank you. This has been really helpful. Some great ideas. Really, well, this last one I love about have them ask you questions. But as I was thinking about coming to this and thinking about, what are my issues around doing an ethical will? There's a chapter in Middlemarch, in George Eliot's Middlemarch, called The Dead Hand. And it's always been one that has been in my head. Like, it's about, one of the central characters puts something in his will that really constrains and confines his wife going forward. Or that's the intention. I think maybe people have had that with their own parent, or where there's a constraint. It's one thing to say, as you did around what you desire for your funeral, for how people observe your Shiva, etc., that's about you.
Right.
But in some ways, an ethical will is about what you want them to do. So let's take a simple example of charities. What if the charity or the cause is people living in settlements in the West Bank, or a yeshiva that's supporting these sorts of people? And that's what the parent wants you to continue to support, because that was their cause. That's a cause they believe in. So how do we reconcile?
Yes, it's a very good question. So personally, what I would say is I would probably be aware of this kind of support my parents are doing while they're alive, and I would approach them and saying, you may desire for me to continue doing this, but I'm finding myself in a moral bind because I don't really support that kind of thing. Now, if you think I'm sure these kinds of, if there have been different viewpoints in the family before, I have a feeling that they have been expressed, perhaps. But if not, they should be expressed while the person is still alive. Without getting into solving the Middle East problem. You're not going to solve that. But if you can you let me know, because I really would love to have a solution. But I think that would be something not to wait, and I agree. Look, if you look at the traditional ethical wills, they're elaborate about doing mitzvahs. And you should do this mitzvah, make sure you don't forget that mitzvah. Now, living in a traditional society, that might have felt less binding because of the social structure people lived in. Yes, you'll continue to keep kosher, right? I would not suggest that you make that kind of statement unless you say, this is why I kept kosher. That's fine, right? I found it helped me with my Jewish identity, creating family cohesiveness. You will choose to go the route that you choose. Now, you may have children who are now fairly grown up, so they've already made certain choices, and you've dealt with them in a certain way, right? I mean, there were many different ways that people live their lives, and you've already had to deal with those. So I wouldn't, of course, put in anything that constricts people to just a certain kind of lifestyle. But I would just say why these things were helpful to me. In the issue of the settlers, that's a very interesting and perhaps subject, as I said, that should be addressed before. And I think an intelligent parent should have the seichel to say, look, this is why I do it, but you'll do what you want to do. And mention more than one. That's another thing. Mention more than one. Yes, I do. I support. Buying Israeli wine from the Gush area. Okay, there are people now buying wine. You see, we go for Pesach stuff. You see, so. But you can also say, but also I always supported Hadassah Hospital. Or there are other Israeli causes that I've supported, not only one. So you might give an option. You might say this orphans home in Yerushalayim, etc. So if you provide options, I think you get out of that quandary. But I agree, you don't want to necessarily trap a person. Use that word, trap a person. In order to respect you, they have to do exactly what you did. I think that's truly unfair. I agree with you. Truly unfair. Anyone else? Don't be shy. Muriel, please unmute. Almost. Try it again.
Okay. Hi.
Yeah.
Hi. Two things. I want to put in a plug for people looking into the River of Life thing that you described, Reb Moshe, because I was one of the people we were in your first group, many of us on this call, and that was so profound an activity for me. And as much as I may have thought I knew myself, I discovered threads in that River of Life that were very meaningful and helpful to me in sort of composing maybe an understanding of who I am. So that's one. And the second thing I'd like to share with people about the letter. My sister passed away 9 years ago, and she left me a letter. And my particular Yortzeit tradition is not only the traditional Yortzeit of lighting a candle, etc., but I always read her letter. And not only is it so immensely touching and moving to me, but it also helps me cry and grieve. And so I think it's a lovely thing to do. So thank you. This has really been so helpful. I can't even
If
tell
you want to have help with that River of Life, it's mentioned, it's described very well in Rachel Cowan's and Linda Thal's book that we use. Rachel, of course, Alea Shalom, was the person I trained with for Wise Aging, but there it describes it more in detail. So definitely a book worth having, and those of you who are in Wise Aging or will be in Wise Aging will have an encounter with that book. So it's, I believe it's called Wise Aging? No. Yes, it's called Wise Aging. Right, and that's by Rachel Cowan and Linda Thal. A very, very helpful book. And she got it from Reb Zalman, and because Reb Zalman wrote a book many years ago when he was very young, basically, in 1985, before it was popular to talk about end-of-life stuff, called From Aging to Saging. And that became a real inspiration for a lot of people, and many of us are in that world of Wise Aging because of their being influenced by my teacher, Reb Zalman. Yeah. Anybody else? If I left something out, or if you have something that you have received, that's a good question. How many of you received such a will from their parents or grandparents? Anyone? Yes, Lori, unmute. Tell me what it was.
Well, it wasn't a letter, but what my father did, he knew he was dying. He had time to prepare. He prepared for his funeral. But the thing that he did was he got together with my brother-in-law, who he had decided should give the eulogy. And what he did was he wanted each of us, his children and his grandchildren, to know what was special about each of us to him. And it was just beautiful. And it was like his last gift. You know, he was still giving at his funeral, his own funeral, instead of looking for people to talk about him. And
that's beautiful. That really is beautiful. You know, and that's, as I said, that's, I think, a great gift you can give is saying, you know, I really knew you and I really appreciated you as you were, as you are, you know, not because of what I wanted you to be. And I think that's really a great gift. Anyone else? Yes, Nancy, and then we'll get to Fran. Nancy, want to unmute? Thank you.
I'm just curious, maybe I should be talking to a psychologist about this, but my grandmother...
There are many in the group, don't worry, we'll all help you.
My grandmother, before she died, years before she died, made all of the arrangements, wrote everything out, had it on her night table for 10 years. And when my mother came to find her on the floor, there was a menu of exactly what needed to be done. And I said, that was brilliant. My mother was so taken by the care that she had put into it, and there was no ambiguity. So it was great. Fast forward, here I am, knowing that that's important, and I have not bought a funeral plot. I have not made those arrangements, and I don't know what's holding me back. And I know a lot of friends who feel similarly. This project sounds so exciting. I want to dive right in, but the actual mechanics of the funeral, I just somehow have a block about it. And I wonder if people have shared their issues with you in the past.
Well, it's there's obviously this idea that somehow we don't want to admit to our own mortality. That's a pretty natural kind of thing. We think, at least I don't think at this age that I'm going to live forever, but maybe you still do, and that's great. Yeah, I mean, there are two ways to be that can help you. One is to get to the conversation, the conversation .org. It's an organization started years ago by Ellen Goodman, and they will give you actual stuff that is easy to deal with. You fill in. It's the forms are there. That's dealing with health proxies and all that. It really helps kids. I want you to know, especially if God forbid you're going through a longer illness. You'd be surprised how there are different approaches your kids are going to have, and it'd be so helpful if you said, "This is what I would desire." Because you might say keep the person on a machine, don't keep them on a machine, etc. You have all of those kinds of things. So the conversation deals with that, etc. And they have wonderful forms to fill out. It's easy, and they're not legally binding, by the way, yet. There are some states where it's going to be more legally binding. It's not legally binding. In Massachusetts, for instance, it can be overridden by a doctor. However, your desires are there, right? At a certain point, if I don't have consciousness, if I, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one organization. The second one is basically some of the guidelines that I mentioned. There is a book called Ethical Wills, edited by Reamer, Jack Reamer. I don't know if he's a relation, is he? Gail, no. Jack Reamer, and that gives you examples of ethical wills. I think they're not as helpful because they're helpful historically to see what people did, but they're not as helpful in our own time of how we do it because of the different media, and why I think that the general biography, which is there, becomes part of the family album. That's what it is. We want to create a chance of a family album, and will be helpful. I hope some of the points that I gave tonight will be helpful. Overcoming the issue of doing it, I agree, it's not easy. That's why do it in bits and pieces. It's not, I'm going to do it all today. Bits and pieces. You write down a note here, you write a note there, put it in a file. Worst comes to worst. If you don't get everything done formally, that file will be available. And it can either be handwritten or it could be printed as you like. Because my handwriting, no one will be able to decipher. I might have to type it. But I would say don't see it as my project for next week. It's a little bit at a time. And the letters, by the way, those letters, you're writing one in 2021. Guess what? You might write a second letter in 2023, God willing, 2025. Your kids or grandkids are going to appreciate the fact that you had them in mind and you wanted to give something over, because you're not going to be the same, by the way, in 2 years. And you're not going to be the same in 5 years. We all are in a process of change. So if you could do little ones, they could be 2 paragraphs. I want you to know my daughter's got 2 beautiful paragraphs from their grandmother. And you could see it was like, wow, it was like such a wonderful gift. Better than money was never an issue, but it was always, I'm not expecting anything from grandma financially, but I got this gift, and that's a wonderful thing. Or they did get a necklace, or they got other things. Right? Now that's stuff that some people leave for the regular will, property and stuff like that. But in most cases, in my mother-in-law's case, she was wise enough to mention all those things while she was alive. Who would get the family samovar? that was brought over from the old country. And I know both Anne and her brother would have liked it, but she had already said, my son will get it, and that's okay. And Anne will, said, so that's things you can do without having to wait to be dead. And what else can I recommend to everybody? I myself cannot follow. If you can get rid of a lot of stuff while you're alive, it makes it a lot easier for the kids. We just received last week 17 boxes of stuff shipped up from Florida. Artwork, paintings, clothing, of stuff like that, and we might have to throw away a lot of it. But the point is that for Anne, it's a very emotional thing, but it keeps that connection going for her. But if you can get rid of everything, there's in India, when you get to a certain age, you become a sannyasin. A sannyasin gets rid of all of his property, everything, and travels around, and if he has children, the children put him up, basically. But there's no issue of waiting to get anything. It's all been distributed. And there are financial planners you can talk to. There was a session we had a while back in Aging and Community about planning, remember? And the financial planner says some people, there is a good reason to maybe let people know what finances they will have access to while you're alive. Why? Because they don't have to wait for you to be dead to have you help them maybe buy a condo, which they need, which they will benefit from. And you might benefit from seeing them doing something really worthwhile with it. So that's a whole issue. Talk to your lawyers and your financial planners. But there are many who do recommend giving gifts on a regular basis. And that allows some tax. There are some tax advantages to that as well. So, but that is something that need not be in the ethical will, but keep in mind of how you can be helpful to them. My feeling is I've been helpful to my children so far. I'd like to continue to be helpful for them.
Reb Moshe, there's a
Yeah.
question in the chat.
Yes, first, I think Fran first.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did not receive this gift from my parents, but I did have the gift of a healthcare directive. And that was because my brother was the first to die in our family, and it was so complicated when his health really was deteriorated, that it became clear to my parents that they needed to not put the rest of the family into that situation. When my father died, we had this document. We used it like we studied it Talmudically. What did that word mean when he said that? And we would, my sister and I and a niece who was involved, we really, really made use of that document, but it was very limited. So Rob, my partner, has done this. He has completed this process for his children and grandchildren. So just having seen that, and both the practical, which lives in a folder, and every time his adult children come to visit, they have to visit the folder, and it's all there from the second I drop dead to what to do.
Oh, good.
But what ended up being a book, it ended up being very, very largely about his grandparents, which is not really what he sat down to do. But in the doing, he realized what really was important, especially in his family life. So I'm thinking about that partly about in your question, Gail. Well, what if I tell them this, but it doesn't comport with their life? Well, for one thing, they might listen to you after death as much as they listened before. They're going to say, oh, mom wanted that, but guess what? I don't like that. But I kind of feel like this process, even though we're thinking about it as a gift to our children or grandchildren, is as much for ourselves, of doing that summing up, making sense of your life. What has this added up to? What are the nuggets that rise to the top? And I I am very curious about that process, having seen it play out differently than I think the way Rob expected. I really look forward to it, but like others, there's plenty of resistance. After sessions like this, I'm pretty gung ho, but I need one a week.
Well, we have the recordings. You can play the recording every week and spend a half hour. That's all. All I'm saying is don't think you have to write a PhD here. That one page summary of your of the people who it can be one page, and that's fine.
I think the personal letters is really a
But the personal letters should be ongoing if you can.
and that is very different than a kind of document for the entire family or others. And
Exactly.
I love that
Right.
idea.
That document goes to everybody. The personal letter, like for instance, I don't know how long I'm going to be around, and if I have more grandchildren, I don't know if I'll see them grown, but I still can give them blessings and wishes, and when they get old enough, they'll read about who I am, etc., etc. I'm not expecting a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old. I hope get to see them get older, but they get married so late these days. If they got married at 12, they'd be a young Zeta. They get married, I'll have to live to 103 to get to a wedding. But this is interesting. They're doing this. This is an aside, but somebody's right. They're doing this project in California of hologramming survivors. Have you heard about this?
Yes.
Where they use artificial intelligence to get all the kinds of information. It's very scary in a way, but you have a hologram of a person who's died, and you can ask a question, and they've worked out the AI in the sense that he or she can answer the question to you as if you're having a conversation. So maybe it'll become more popular. You create a hologram. You show up at the wedding. It's like having a ghost come back. It can be a little scary. Maybe I wouldn't do that. But I'm saying the technology is so weird today. Now, another thing about using videotape is I didn't do it with my parents, and I didn't have it. They died many years ago, and I have forgotten what they sounded like. Videotape can really help. This is what you sound like. This is what you look like. The pictures they may have seen. They may have read the family album. You may have pictures of your wedding and stuff like that. That people do see, right? They see dad and mom as kids, or they see Bubby and Zadie as a young wedding. Many wedding pictures exist, but to hear the voice is mamish agavald, because it's the voice and the sound that often penetrates in a very deep way, deep way. But just a little aside, if there's a certain fragrance, literally, that you've worn your whole life, your favorite little cologne or perfume, whatever it is, the olfactory memory is very strong. So I would suggest maybe buying a little bit of it and saying, after I'm gone, you want to smell grandma, give a spritz, and you'll have you'll remember how I smelled. But that's up to you. It's something. I mean, how much Old Spice, do they have to smell? They'll figure it out. Any questions or comments? Someone else had a hand up. Yes, Fran, how are you?
So I really am struggling with the same question I think that Nancy had, and how do you think about funeral arrangements? Because my father died in Florida, but before that, he had worked out with my stepmother exactly with a funeral home, the casket, the transportation to the plot that they had in New York, and it made life so much easier for us after he died. And I would like to do something like that, but I think part of the problem is geographic. Right now, my daughter lives in Oregon. I don't know how long she'll live in Oregon, maybe forever, maybe she'll be back here. I go constantly, one of my favorite places, and I was there today with Bobby, who's on this call, to Forest Hill Cemetery. I love the Forest Hill Cemetery. But if she's in Oregon and never comes back, then that has no meaning for her. I mean, why? The question is, why do we bury ourselves? Why do we have these tombstones? And I'm just trying to work all that out in my mind, and it really takes me to not being buried.
Yeah, but being cremated or
Cremation,
put it
right?
left on a mountain for the predators to get, whatever.
Yeah. Oh, cremation,
As
and
Tibetans often do
yeah.
that. Yeah.
And I know you and I had a brief conversation about this before, but I really would like to explore that some more because I just think that,
Right.
when you, it's not important to me to have my body underground somewhere. It's not important to me,
Right.
and I think that, and I've talked to her actually. What I do is I take photographs of granite benches and I say, I would like a bench in my name. I'm a walker. I walk many, many miles.
Right.
And there's nothing like a nice bench to sit down on. And I think, well, a granite bench, maybe you can inscribe something. But wherever she is, put it down.
I see that at the reservoir, Route 9, the benches, etc. Look,
Right.
as a fairly traditional Jew and as a rabbi, I don't recommend cremation. However, people do what they want to do. That's the bottom line. However, I agree that whatever, if you do cremation or not, it would be important to have a place where people can gather. I think that's why the tombstones were for. And traditionally, when you went to visit the grave in the old days, you rebuilt the stones. That's why we leave a stone on top of a headstone. You literally rebuilt it. You brought a time to gather stones, as he says in Ecclesiastes, and a time to throw stones away. So you would come back and every year and you would rebuild the monument, if you will. But again, people will decide to do what they want to do. I can't in any way enforce what people want to do. I don't recommend it. However, when there's one couple, I know that one wanted to be buried and one wanted cremation. I suggested, well, get a double headstone, bury the ashes next to you, and that could be a good way to, bring it together. Now, the cost of plots have gotten crazy. Years ago, it was 25 years ago, they were fairly reasonable, and that's why it's good to put away some money specific for funerals or whatever kind of arrangements you want to make, cremation, whatever it is, and that you can make those arrangements in advance. By the way, even Jewish funeral homes will arrange cremation.
No, I guess what I'm saying is that when your family is so geographically separate and you don't know where you will be in your last days. I could be out in Oregon with my daughter. So
Right.
would I buy a plot here? Would I buy a plot there? She might be coming back to Massachusetts.
Right.
So I
It's
think that's
right.
a
You can buy and then sell plots. Plots can be sold. The Jewish Cemetery Association of Massachusetts will give you back your initial cost of the plot, not the interest. So if you invest, it's not a great property investment, and you can't build, et cetera, on top. But the bottom line is that there are ways of making sure that there would not be great financial damage done by doing in advance. So I would suggest that you do that. Another thing I'm getting questions about now for the first time in a long time is not being buried in a non-denominational cemetery, not a Jewish cemetery. Particularly, the questions are Forest Hills, Mount Auburn, and the Newton Cemetery, which is a beautiful cemetery. So again, how do I respond as a rabbi? I say the Abrahamic traditions, all of them, have believed that people should be buried on quote unquote consecrated ground. But some people say I want to be in a general cemetery. As I say, I can only tell you what Jews have done, and that still an overwhelmingly amount of Jews choose to be buried in Jewish cemeteries. Choose to be. But as I say, my job is to tell you what the tradition has been. Everyone today makes their own choice. We live in a whole different place. There's no kind of coercion possible. Neither should there be any coercion possible. Any other questions? So if you want to, we have a little bit of time. I wanted to end in about 5 minutes. Maybe Tiferet, be so kind and let's run through the slides again. Just one slower, okay? So people can see it. Thank you. And thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. And as I say, we already have our wise issue for the fall pretty signed up. and we'll let you know when the next session will be. We limit, our sessions, our groups to 12 to 14. Okay. Step number 1. Okay. Let's go back to audience for one moment. I'm sorry. All right. That's very important to decide. The first document, I said, that large biographical document can go anywhere. Could go to your uncle, your brother, your cousins, etc. That would be great. And then you individualize for children and grandchildren. Okay? We are blessed to have a wonderful Jewish genealogical society downtown on Newberry Street. And they have experts in different areas. So if you say I'm Lithuanian, okay, there's somebody who actually knows where Jews lived in Lithuania, which makes it a lot easier than having to find it yourself. So you get a lot of help there. Yes, and Fran Price reminds us to have a folder where all this could be. Okay, your biography, I mentioned the things that there's nothing too small, really. I would love to have heard from my Zeta. I loved apples. Every time I saw an apple tree, I wanted to go over and pick an apple. I said, gee, that's nice. I mean, that's a little bit of makes a person much more human, much more accessible, etc. Communities, okay, let's go to 3. Okay. Written or video, etc. And as I say, try the short videos, 2 or 3 minutes, on a specific topic. You'll see that's a lot easier to do, and it doesn't get tedious or pedantic. Yeah. Step 4, we skip, go back. Okay, the personal handwritten letter, if you think they can read your handwriting. I must say, my mother-in-law had beautiful handwriting, because I think at one time in her education, they used to think that was important. It was called penmanship. I don't know if you remember that. But now our kids are not even going to learn cursive anymore. So it's going to be very interesting. They not be long, intent, specific events would be a wonderful thing to share. You remember the time we were at, how I loved being with you, etc., etc. And blessings for the future. I think that's something we have plenty of blessings we can give, and they have plenty of place to receive it. And specific events, like you could write a letter now for a grandchild's wedding saying, I don't know who you're marrying or where, but I hope it's a wonderful person. I hope you have a relationship that's going to last, and I wish you blessings. And I'm so glad I was married, and etc. And maybe a little word of wisdom. That would be nice as well. Step 5. Right. Talk about those who have made impact on you. I forgot another parentheses. Forgive me. And finally, dealing with some of the more practical things and having that arranged in advance as much as you can. Look, you're going to find if you ask to be cremated, there may be your kids say, well, that's not. One child may be more observant of Jewish tradition that say, no, I'm not going to do that. It's against the halacha. It's against the Jewish tradition. But the bottom line is there is also kivud av ve'em, honoring your mother and father, and I think it's a very important one. Not cremating is not in the 10 Commandments, by the way. Or today you don't say 10 Commandments, you call them the 10 suggestions. The 10 suggestions. So, and I say those causes, etc. And finally, if you have another question, just get in touch with me, Reb Moshe at tbzbrookline.org. I'd be glad to respond to you. Anybody want to give a concluding remark or comment?
I just want to thank everybody as a member of the Aging and Community group. I want to thank everybody today for coming. Again, this has been recorded, so you can watch it again if you'd like to. Do watch for upcoming aging and community programs. This is the last in this series, but we will have lots more programs coming up. And let me add also to watching the happenings, because Reb Moshe has a wonderful series coming up on arts and culture, which will be starting next Tuesday evening.
Wonderful.
So check that out in the
Good. I'll give you a little more details. The first one is on, we are blessed to have some wonderful people. We have a wonderful composer in our community, Osvaldo Goliov, just did a wonderful piece of work based on the David Grossman's Falling Out of Time. We'll have him and another member of the congregation who's the music critic for the Globe, Jeremy Eichler. So that's on the 9th. On the 16th, we're going to have a leading director in town, Judy. For us, she's Judy Epstein Fisher. Professionally, she's Judy Braha, and she is the head of the direction at the Fine Arts School at the BU. And one of her students, an actor who's a part of our community, Jesse Garlick, Jonathan and Lauren's son, is going to be with her, and we're going to talk about what does a director really do with an actor? How does it really come together? So we're interested in the process. And the third one, I'm very thrilled to have on the 23rd, Michael Goldman, who is the founder of the Boston Jewish Film Festival many years ago now, and the current curator, Ariana Cohen-Halberstam, who I knew ever since she was a little kid. And to have the beginning and have something that's happening currently and talk about what is a Jewish film? What makes it Jewish, et cetera, and how is it that we've seen this tremendous growth of it rather than a diminution of it. And not only that, we're seeing the rebirth of Yiddish films, which I find oise gewöhnlich, terrific. So thank you all. And as I say, if you want to be in touch, please do. It's so good to see you all. And I hope that these things are helpful. And remember, Nancy, by doing this, it doesn't say you're going to die. Okay, verstehst? It doesn't mean you're going to die, right? You can live bis 120 till 120, etc. But you'll have this done. You'll feel better, you'll worry about who gets the candlesticks. You can think about it, but you can still lighting them for a long, long time. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, Reb Moshe.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much, Reb Moshe.
Bye-bye now.
Thank you. Wonderful
Right.
program. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you.
Susan, I just converted the slides to a PDF and I'm sending them to April so they can go out in happenings.
Wonderful. And when you put the recording on, can you, because I noticed we were recording at the beginning when Reb Moshe was having
I'll cut
difficulty.
it.
Can you cut that? We did do a trial, like a run through before.
I'm sure.
And he found it really quickly. He
Yeah.
was able to get it quickly, but technology is not everybody's
Always changing.
Yeah, always changing. So thank you so much. I
Sure.
so appreciate your help with all this. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And that will be great that will be in the happenings, and the recording as well will be in the happening.
Yeah, I'm gonna upload it to YouTube.
Terrific. And in the happenings as well. He specifically wanted it to be in the happenings too.
Yeah. Well, I have to get it onto YouTube first so I can get it in happenings.
Great. Thank you so much. We so appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right. You take good care, and
Thanks. You too.
we'll see you very soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.